The red sun of Calrose cast long shadows across the broken colony as Commander Kim Dae-ho stood on the observation deck of the main bunker. 3 years had passed since the last supply ship had arrived. 3 years since the Vorthan Empire had cut them off from the rest of the galaxy. 3 years of watching his people slowly starve. Dae-ho pressed his hand against the reinforced glass and watched the empty streets below. Once this colony had been home to 50,000 miners and their families, now barely 8,000 remained alive in the underground shelters. The rest had died from hunger, disease, or Vorthan attacks. Commander, a voice called from behind him. He turned to see Park Min-ae climbing the stairs to the observation deck. Her engineering uniform was stained with grease and her face showed the exhaustion that never left any of them anymore. The transmitter is ready for another attempt. Min-ae had been trying to fix their long-range communication array for months. Every few weeks, she would patch together enough salvaged parts to send out a distress signal. Every time the signal would fade into empty space with no response. The Galactic Federation had abandoned them. How long will it last this time? Asked, maybe 2 hours, if we're lucky, Min-ae replied. I had to pull power cells from the backup life support systems. We can't keep doing this much longer. Dae-ho nodded. He knew their situation was desperate. The colony's main power plant had been destroyed in the first Vorthan attack. They were running on emergency generators that broke down more often than they worked. Food supplies would last maybe another month if they continued with strict rationing. They walked together through the bunker's narrow corridors. The walls were lined with pipes and cables that Minnie had installed to keep the basic systems running. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow. The air recycling system made a constant humming sound that had become the soundtrack of their underground existence. In the main shelter area, hundreds of colonists sat in small groups. Some played quiet games with their children. Others stared at the walls with the blank expression of people who had given up hope. The smell of the recycled air mixed with unwashed bodies and the thin soup that served as their main meal. Park Tae-young, Min-ae's younger brother, was distributing water rations to a group of families. At 22, he was one of the youngest. People left in the colony. The Vorthan attacks had taken many of the young adults who had tried to fight back in the early days. Tae-young, Dae-ho called. How are the supply levels? Not good, Commander, the young man replied. Water recycling is working, but the purification filters are nearly worn out. Food reserves are down to emergency levels. The medical bay ran out of antibiotics last week. Dae-ho felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him. Every decision he made affected the lives of everyone in the colony. Every resource he allocated meant someone else would have to do without. He had trained as a military officer, not a colony administrator. But the original governor had died in the 3rd month of the siege. What about the outer perimeter? He asked. Lee Haijin is running patrol with the last 2 functional fighters. Tae-young answered. She says the Vorthan ships are moving in closer patterns. They might be planning another ground assault. Dae-ho walked to the communication center, where Min-ae was making final preparations for their latest attempt to contact the outside galaxy. The transmitter was a collection of salvaged parts held together with improvised connections and desperate hope. It looked like it might fall apart if someone sneezed too hard. This is our 17th attempt, Min-ae said as she powered up the system. Federation protocol says any colony in distress should receive a response within 72 hours. We haven't heard anything in 3 years. Maybe they can't hear us, Dae-ho suggested. Maybe the signal isn't strong enough. Or maybe they just don't care, Min-ae replied bitterly. We're just a mining colony on the edge of Federation space. Not worth risking a fleet to save. The transmitter hummed to life. Min-ae adjusted the frequency and began broadcasting their standard distress message. This is Calrose Colony sending emergency distress signal. We are under siege by Vorthan forces. Civilian population in immediate danger. Request immediate assistance. 8,000 colonists remaining. Supplies critically low. Please respond. She repeated the message several times, then switched to automated broadcast mode. The transmitter would continue sending the signal until the power cells died, or the Vorthan ships detected it and destroyed it with orbital bombardment. How long before they find this transmission? Dae-ho asked. Usually about 6 hours, Mine said. They have good signal detection equipment. Once they lock onto our position, they'll hit us with everything they have. An alarm began sounding throughout the bunker. The colonists looked up with expressions of familiar fear. They had heard this alarm many times before. It meant Vorthon. Ships were approaching. Lee Hyjin's voice crackled over the intercom system. Commander, we have 12 Vorthon fighters inbound. They're moving fast and low. Looks like they're targeting the north residential sector. All civilians 2 deep. Shelters, Deho ordered. Defense teams to positions. The colonists moved quickly but calmly. They had practiced this routine many times. Parents gathered their children and headed for the deepest levels of the bunker complex. The few remaining defense volunteers grabbed their weapons and took positions at the blast doors. Through the observation deck windows, Deho watched the Vorthon fighters streak across the sky. They were sleek silver craft that moved with deadly precision. Their energy weapons lit up the evening sky as they bombed the abandoned buildings above the bunker. They're not trying to break through, Mine observed. They're just letting us. No, they're still there. Psychological warfare, Deho agreed. They want us to know we're trapped. The attack lasted only 10 minutes. The Vorthon fighters disappeared as quickly as they had come, leaving behind burning rubble and the bitter smell of scorched metal. The colonists slowly emerged from the deep shelters and returned to their daily routine of survival. That night, Ho sat in his small quarters and wrote in his journal. He had been keeping a record of their situation, hoping that someday someone would find it and understand what had happened to the people of Calrose. Day 1095 of the siege, he wrote. Another distress signal sent. Another attack survived. The people are losing hope. Not sure how much longer we can hold out. If anyone finds this record, know that we tried. We never stopped trying to. Get home. Outside his window, the stars looked cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the galaxy continued its business, while the people of Calrose slowly died. But tomorrow they would try again. They would send another signal, ration another. Days, food, and hope that someone somewhere still cared enough to help. Captain Cho, Sungmin, floated in the zero-gravity observation lounge of the exploration ship Indomitable. Watching the stars drift by through the massive viewport, the ship was 3 days out from the Centauri trading station, carrying a cargo of rare minerals that humanity had extracted from the asteroid belt. It was routine work, but it paid well and helped establish human credibility in the galactic marketplace. The bridge communication system crackled to life. Captain, this is Yang Borum in communications. Could you come to the bridge? I'm picking up something unusual. Sunmin pushed off from the viewport and drifted toward the corridor. The Indomitable was a converted cargo hauler that humanity had purchased from a Talaxian shipyard. It was not the most elegant vessel in space, but it was reliable and well-suited for long-range missions. The human crew had made numerous modifications over the past year, adding better sensors and more comfortable living quarters. On the bridge, Communications Officer Yang Boarm was hunched over her console, wearing the oversized headphones that she claimed helped her filter out background noise. She was one of the best signal analysts in the human fleet, with an almost supernatural ability to pull meaningful data from cosmic static. What do you have, Boarm? Songmin asked as he strapped himself into the captain's chair. I've been monitoring the long-range communication bands like always, she replied. Most of it is just commercial traffic and routine military communications. But there's this one signal that keeps repeating. It's very faint, coming from the Calrose system. Sumin pulled up the navigation charts on his display. The Calrose system was on the outer edge of Federation space, in a region that was considered dangerous due to frequent pirate activity. It was primarily a mining system with one major colony. What kind of signal? He asked. Federation Distress Protocol, Bjorm said. Standard emergency broadcast. But the signal is badly degraded. It's been bouncing around space for who knows how long. The transmission is fragmented, but I can make out parts of it. She played the signal through the bridge speakers. The audio was filled with static and interference, but Songmin could hear fragments of words. Calrose colony, ... Emergency, siege, assistance, population, danger. How long has this been broadcasting? He asked. That's the strange part, Borum replied. Based on the signal degradation and the transmission patterns, I think this has been going out for years, maybe 3 or 4 years continuously. Sungmin frowned. A distress signal that had been broadcasting for years meant either the situation was ongoing or the transmitter was automated and no one was left to turn it off. Either possibility was disturbing. Have you checked with Federation Central? Commandy asked. That's where it gets interesting, Bjorn said. I sent a query about the Calrose system. According to their records, the colony was classified as lost contact 2 years ago. No rescue mission was attempted. Lost contact? Sumin repeated. What does that mean? It means they stopped responding to routine communications, and the Federation wrote them off as destroyed or abandoned. The system is listed as too dangerous to investigate. Sungmin studied the star charts more carefully. The Calrose system was indeed in a dangerous area. It was close to the territory controlled by the Vorthan Empire, a militaristic species that had been expanding aggressively in recent years. The Federation had been trying to negotiate with them, but the talks had not been going well. Bjorn, can you clean up that signal anymore? I want to hear exactly what they're saying. She worked at her console for several minutes, applying various filters and enhancement algorithms. The signal became clearer, though still broken up by static. This is Calrose Colony sending emergency distress signal. We are under siege by Vorthan forces. Civilian population in immediate danger. Request immediate assistance. 8,000 colonists remaining, supplies critically low. Please respond. The bridge fell silent as the message repeated. 8,000. People were calling for help, and apparently no one in the galaxy was listening. Captain, said Lieutenant Park Dongwook from the navigation station, the Calrose system is 3 days from our current position. We could alter course to investigate. That would mean going into Vorthan space, replied Chief Engineer Kim So-young from the engineering station. Indomitable is not a warship. We have mining lasers and some basic defensive systems, but we're not equipped for combat. Sungmin considered the options. The smart choice would be to report the signal to Federation Command and continue with their original mission. But the message was clear. 8,000 people were in danger and calling for help. Bjorn tried to raise Federation Command. I want to speak to someone in authority. It took nearly an hour to establish communication with the Federation's regional headquarters. The response was not encouraging. Admiral Telvok, a tall insectoid Zephorian, appeared on the main screen with an expression of bureaucratic annoyance. Captain Sungmin, the Admiral said in the clicking language that human translators rendered as mechanical speech. Understand you have questions about the Calrose system? Yes, sir. We've detected ongoing distress signals from the colony. They claim to have 8,000 survivors under siege. The Calrose system has been classified as lost, Admiral Telvak replied. Our intelligence indicates that the entire colony was destroyed by Vorthan forces over 2 years ago. What you are detecting is probably automated systems or signal echoes. But sir, the message specifically mentions current population numbers and requests immediate assistance. Captain, you must understand the strategic situation. The Vorthan Empire controls that entire region. They have 12 capital ships and over 40 fighters stationed there. Any rescue mission would require a major fleet operation that would likely trigger a full-scale war. Sungmin felt his frustration growing. So we're just going to let 8,000 people die? Captain, I appreciate your concern for humanitarian issues, but the Federation cannot risk the lives of millions to save a few thousand. The Calrose colony was established in a dangerous area against our recommendations. They accepted the risks. Communication ended, leaving the bridge crew in uncomfortable silence. Sungmin stared at the blank screen, trying to process what he had just heard. The Federation was willing to abandon 8,000 people because rescuing them would be inconvenient. Captain Yang Borum said quietly, I'm still receiving the distress signal. It's getting stronger as we move closer to the Calrose system and the signal degradation analysis. The signal is definitely current. Someone is actively broadcasting this message. This is not an automated system or an echo. Sungmin made his decision. Dongwook. Alter course for the Calrose system. Best speed. That will take us through Vorthon patrol routes, the navigator warned. I know. Sol Young, I want you to prepare the ship for possible combat. Strip down all non-essential systems and route power to shields and weapons. Captain Kim So-young said carefully, the Indomitable is not designed for military action. We're basically a cargo ship with better sensors. Then we'll have to be very careful and very smart, Seung-min replied. Bioram, keep monitoring that signal. There are really 8,000 people down there. We're going to find a way to help them. As the ship changed course toward the Calrose system, Seung-min wondered if he was making the right choice. The human fleet was small and still earning respect in the galactic community. Taking unauthorized action in Vorthon space could have serious consequences, but he had heard the desperation in that distress signal. Someone was calling for help, and apparently humanity was the only species willing to answer. Admiral Han Jae-wook stood in the Central Command Center of Luna Station, humanity's primary military headquarters, orbiting Earth's moon. The holographic display showed the tactical situation in the Calrose system, and the numbers were not encouraging. 12 Vorthon capital ships, 43 fighters, and an unknown number of ground forces. Against this, humanity could assemble perhaps 20 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels. Admiral, said Captain Cho Seung-min, who had returned from his reconnaissance mission 2 days earlier. The distress signal is definitely authentic. We detected life signs on the planet's surface. There are survivors down there, Jae-wook studied. The younger officer, Seung-min, had risked his ship and crew to gather intelligence on the Vorthon blockade, using the Indomitable's enhanced sensors to map enemy positions from the edge of the system. It was exactly the kind of initiative that made him proud to serve with other humans. The Federation Council has made their position clear, Jae-wook said. They will not authorize a rescue mission. Consider the risk too high and the strategic value too low. But sir, 8,000 people are dying down there. We can't just abandon them. I agree completely, Jae-wook replied, which is why I've called this meeting. The command center was filled with humanity's senior military and civilian leadership. Defense Minister Yoon Hae-won sat at the main table next to Chief Engineer Kwon Soo-jin and Fleet Commander Park Jin-ho. Representatives from human colonies throughout the galaxy had joined the meeting via holographic link. Ladies and gentlemen, Jae-wook began, we face a decision that will define who we are as a species. The galactic community has decided that the people of Calrose are not worth saving. I disagree. Commander Park Jin-ho leaned forward. Admiral, with respect, we have exactly 19 combat-capable ships. The Vorthines have 12 capital ships, each one more powerful than our best cruiser. This is not a battle we can win through conventional means. Then we don't fight conventionally, Jae-wook replied. Engineer Kwon, what do you have for us? Gone. Soo-jin stood and activated a holographic display showing technical specifications. We've been analyzing Vorthon ship designs based on Captain Seung-min's sensor data. Their vessels are optimized for fleet engagement against other military ships. They have powerful weapons and strong shields, but they're not designed to handle unconventional attacks. She highlighted several weak points on the ship schematics. Their shield generators are vulnerable to specific harmonic frequencies. We can modify our mining lasers to operate at these frequencies. We might be able to create localized shield failures. Mining lasers? Asked Commander Park Jin-ho. Most of our ships are converted civilian vessels, Kwon Soo-jin explained. Cargo haulers, mining ships, exploration vessels. We don't have proper military weapons, but we have industrial equipment that can be repurposed. Defense Minister Yoon Hae-won activated another display. We've also been working on torpedo modifications. Our manufacturing capabilities allow us to produce large numbers of simple, effective weapons. While the Vorthons have sophisticated point defense systems, they're designed to stop military-grade torpedoes, not mining charges. You're talking about turning industrial equipment into weapons, Park Jin-ho said. That's not military doctrine. Exactly. Jae-wook replied, military doctrine is what they expect. We need to do things they won't expect, Captain Seung-min spoke up. During my reconnaissance, I noticed something about their patrol patterns. They're very regular, very predictable. They're not expecting anyone to challenge them, 'cause no. One has been stupid enough to try, Park Jin-ho muttered. Jae-wook corrected. Because no one has been desperate enough to try. The Vorthans think like a conventional military. They assume we'll either send a massive fleet or nothing at all. They're not prepared for a small force using unconventional tactics. The discussion continued for hours. Engineers proposed modifications to civilian ships. Pilots suggested attack patterns that would maximize confusion and minimize losses. Officers calculated fuel and ammunition requirements for a mission that would take them far from any friendly base. What about the other species? Asked Colony Representative Lee Mung-soo via hologram. Will anyone support us? The Talaxians have offered to sell us additional supplies, Yoon Hae-won replied. The Centauri traders are willing to provide fuel and ammunition at cost, but no one is offering military support. They're afraid of the Vorthans, Soong-min said. The Vorthan Empire has been expanding for decades. No one wants to be their next target. Then we go alone, Jae-wook decided. How many ships can we assemble? Fleet Commander Park Jin-ho consulted his datapad. 19 ships with combat capability, another 12 that could serve as support vessels. Most of the combat ships are converted freighters with improvised weapons. Crew, we have volunteers from every human colony. More than we have ships for, actually. Word has spread about the Calrose situation. People want to help. Jae-wook was not surprised. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy for being stubborn and occasionally reckless. When other species heard about impossible odds, they calculated the probability of failure. When humans heard about impossible odds, they started planning how to beat them. What about the colonists on Calrose? He asked. Can we communicate with them? We've been trying to establish contact, Young Bjoram reported. Their transmitter is very weak and the signal is intermittent, but we've managed to get some basic information to them. They know help is coming. Do they know it's just us? No, sir. We thought it better to let them believe the full Federation fleet was responding. Jae-wook nodded. The colonists needed hope, not the crushing reality that their rescue depended on a small human fleet with improvised weapons and desperate tactics. Engineer Kwan, how long do you need to modify our ships? 3 weeks minimum, she replied. We need to install the harmonic frequency generators, modify the mining equipment, and train the crews on the new systems. You have 2 weeks, Jae-wook said. The colonists don't have time for us to do everything perfectly, Sir Commander Park, Jin-ho said. I need to ask this directly. What are our chances of success? Jae-wook looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. They were scared, determined, and completely committed to an impossible mission. It was exactly what he expected from his species. Honestly, very low. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and operating far from any support. The Vorthans have every advantage except one. What's that? Park Jin-ho asked. They don't know we're coming. The meeting broke up with everyone understanding their assignments. Engineers would work around the clock to modify the ships. Pilots would train on new tactics. Supply officers would gather everything needed for a long-range mission with no expectation of return. As the command center emptied, Jae-wook remained staring at the tactical display. The Calrose system looked very small and very far away. 1,000 people were depending on them, and humanity had never attempted anything this ambitious. But that was exactly why they had to try. Other species in the galaxy saw humans as newcomers, barely civilized primitives who had stumbled into space travel. They were about to learn that sometimes the newest player in the game was the most dangerous one. Outside the command center windows, human ships were already beginning to gather near Luna Station. Converted cargo haulers, mining vessels, and exploration ships were being transformed into an improvised battle fleet. It was not the most powerful force in the galaxy, but it was. Powered by something the Vorthans had never faced before. Human stubbornness and the absolute refusal to abandon people in need. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Calrose system, and Captain Cho Seung-min felt his stomach drop as the sensor readings appeared on his screen. The Vorthan blockade was even more formidable than their intelligence had suggested. Massive capital ships hung in space like deadly metal mountains, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that could vaporize his converted cargo hauler in seconds. "Contact," announced Lieutenant Yang Boram from the communications station. "Vorthon command ship is hailing us." On the main screen, a reptilian face appeared. The Vorthon commander had scales that shifted from dark green to silver, and eyes that glowed with predatory intelligence. When he spoke, his voice carried the arrogance of someone who had never been challenged. "Unknown vessels, you have entered Vorthon space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed." Sungmin activated the response. "Channel, this is Captain Sungmin of the human fleet. We are here to evacuate the civilian population of Calrose Colony under galactic humanitarian law." The Vorthon commander's expression changed to something that might have been amusement. "Humans, I have heard of your species. You are the primitives who recently joined the galactic community. You have 18 small ships against 12 capital vessels. This is either brave or incredibly stupid." "We prefer to think of it as necessary," Sungmin replied. "Very well. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system. After that, we will consider you hostile and respond accordingly." The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the Indomitable in tense silence. Through the viewport, Sungmin could see the other human ships spreading out in the formation. They had practiced for weeks. Converted mining vessels, cargo haulers, and exploration ships moved with the coordination of a military fleet, even if they didn't look like one. "All ships, this is Admiral Han Jae-wook aboard the Determination," came the voice over the fleet communication channel. "You all know the plan. We have one chance to do this right. Remember, we're not trying to win a conventional battle. We're trying to create enough chaos to get our people to the surface." The Vorthon ships began moving into attack formation, their massive hulls turning to present their heaviest weapons toward the human fleet. Point defense systems activated, creating a web of potential fire zones that would make conventional torpedo attacks impossible. "All ships, execute Plan Thunderbolt," Admiral Jae-wook ordered. The human fleet split into 3 groups and accelerated toward the Vorthon formation. But instead of attacking the capital ships directly, they targeted the spaces between them. Captain Namjita, commanding the converted mining vessel Prospector, led the first group straight into the center of the Vorthon formation. "What are they doing?" the Vorthon commander demanded as he watched the human ships approach. "They're not following any standard attack pattern." The answer came moments later as the human mining ships activated their industrial equipment. Massive. Clouds of metallic chaff erupted from their cargo holds, filling space with reflective particles that confused Vorthon sensors. The particles had been specially treated to interfere with energy weapon targeting systems. "Sensors are being disrupted," reported the Vorthon tactical officer. "We're getting false readings throughout the formation." At the same time, the human ships began broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. The Vorthons had expected military communication protocols, but the humans were using civilian radio, emergency beacons, mining equipment, frequencies, and even entertainment channels. The result was a wall of electronic noise that made coordination between Vorthon ships nearly impossible. "Engineering teams activate harmonic frequency generators," ordered Captain Sung Dash. The modified mining lasers on the human ships began, firing but not at the Vorthon hulls. Instead, they targeted the specific frequencies that Engineer Quan Sujin had identified as vulnerable points in Vorthon shield systems. The lasers created resonance patterns that caused localized shield failures across the enemy formation. "Impossible," the Vorthon commander said as he watched sections of his shields flicker and fail. "Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our defenses." "Tactical?" officer reported. "They're not using conventional weapons. These appear to be industrial mining lasers modified to operate at harmonic frequencies. Our shields were not designed to handle this type of attack." The human ships pressed their advantage, pouring through the gaps in the Vorthon formation. Captain Lee Hajin, flying a converted exploration vessel called the Pathfinder, led a group of fighters in a series of hit-and-run attacks. They used their superior maneuverability to avoid the heavy weapons of the capital ships while striking. At communication arrays and sensor clusters, they're targeting our coordination systems, the Vorthon commander realized. They know they can't destroy our ships, so they're trying to blind us. But the humans had one more surprise. Captain Nam, Giai's mining vessel Prospector, suddenly changed course, accelerating directly toward the largest Vorthan capital ship. The enemy vessel's point defense systems locked onto the incoming threat, but the ship's industrial armor was designed to withstand asteroid impacts. "Gite, what are you doing?" Admiral Jaewu called over the communication channel. "Creating an opening, sir," Nam Jite replied calmly. "All crew to escape pods. We're going to ram." The Prospector's crew evacuated in the final seconds before impact. The converted mining vessel, loaded with industrial explosives, struck the Vorthan flagship just below the main bridge. The explosion was massive, not because of the ship's size, because of the mining charges that had been packed into its cargo hold. The Vorthan flagship didn't explode, but the impact created a massive breach in its hull. More importantly, it knocked out the ship's main communication array, leaving the other Vorthon vessels without coordinated command. "Admiral," Jaewook ordered, "all ships break through to the planet." The human fleet accelerated through the gap in the Vorthan formation. The enemy ships tried to respond, but their coordination was broken. Some turned to pursue the human ships, while others tried to maintain the blockade formation. The confusion was exactly what the human plan had counted on, Captain. Seungmin watched the tactical display as human ships broke through the orbital defenses. They were taking losses. The converted freighter Homeland had been destroyed by a Vorthan energy beam. The exploration vessel Pioneer was badly damaged and falling behind the main group, but they were getting through. For the first time in 3 years, human ships were approaching the surface of Calrose. "Barum, can you raise the colony?" Min asked. "Working on it, sir," the communications officer replied. "The interference is heavy, but I'm getting a signal." After several minutes of static, a voice came through the speakers. It was Commander Kim Dae-ho, and he sounded like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Human ships. This is Calrose Colony. We see you on our sensors. Please confirm. Are you really here to help us?" "Confirmed, Commander Kim," Seungmin replied. "We're here to get you out. Prepare your people for evacuation. How many ships do you have?" Kim Dae-ho asked. Shem Jimin looked at his tactical display. It started with 19 combat vessels and 12 support ships. Now they had 14. Combat ships and 8 support vessels still functional, against a Vorthan fleet that was regrouping and preparing for a second attack. "Enough," he said simply. "We have enough." The human ships began their descent toward the planet's surface. Behind them, the Vorthan fleet was recovering from their surprise and beginning to pursue. The battle for Calrose was far from over, but for the first time in 3 years, the people on the surface had reason to hope, as the first human drop pods began falling from the sky. Commander Kim Dae-ho stood on the observation deck of the colony bunker and watched the impossible happen. The sky above Calrose was filled with human ships, and help had finally arrived. Major Oh Mung-ho felt the impact as his drop pods slammed into the surface of Calrose Colony. The reinforced shell cracked open with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and he stepped out into a world that looked like it had been through hell. Broken. Buildings stretched in every direction, their walls scorched black from years of Vorthan bombing. The air tasted of smoke and desperation. "Blackbird Squad, sound off," he called into his communication headset. One by one, his soldiers reported. 12 Marines had made it down safely from the first wave. Their equipment was a mixture of military gear and improvised tools that human engineers had cobbled together during the 2 weeks of preparation. They carried conventional rifles alongside mining charges that had been converted into explosives. "Major, this is Captain Cho Seung-min, in orbit," came the voice from his ship's communication system. "We're tracking Vorthan ground forces moving toward your position. Estimate 200 soldiers in powered armor approaching from the north." Checked his tactical display. The human landing zone was a bombed-out industrial area about 3 kilometers from the main colony bunker. They needed to establish a secure perimeter and then push through to link up with the survivors. "Copy that, Captain. We'll hold this position until the second wave arrives." The ground shook as more drop pods crashed down around the landing zone. Human soldiers emerged from the pods and quickly began setting up defensive positions. These were not elite special forces troops. Most were volunteers from mining colonies and cargo ship crews who had been given basic military training during the journey to Cal Rose. A young corporal named Shin Woo-jin approached Myung-ho's position. Sure, I'm picking up movement in the ruins. To the east, looks like Vorthan patrol units. Myung-ho raised his binoculars and scanned the broken cityscape. Through the gaps in the ruined buildings, he could see the distinctive silver armor of Vorthan soldiers. They moved with the confidence of troops who had controlled this area for 3 years. They don't know we're here yet, he observed. Good, let's keep it that way. The first contact came 20 minutes later. A Vorthan patrol of 6 soldiers rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a human defensive position. Engagement lasted less than 30 seconds, but it announced to every Vorthan unit in the area that something had changed on Cal Rose. All units, we have hostile contact, Myung-ho reported to his scattered squads. Expect company soon. The response was swift and overwhelming. Vorthan forces began converging on the human landing zone from multiple directions. Their powered armor gave them significant advantages in speed and protection, but the humans had something the Vorthans didn't expect. Squad leaders implement Plan Mole, Myung-ho ordered. Sergeant Park Soo-bin led her team through a series of maintenance tunnels that connected the industrial buildings. The passages had been used by colony workers for years, and the human engineers had quickly mapped them during their brief reconnaissance flights. Vorthans don't fit in these tunnels, Soo-bin reported as her team moved through the narrow passages. Their armor is too bulky. We can move under their positions without being detected. Above ground, the Vorthan forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to behave like a conventional military unit. Human soldiers would appear from unexpected directions, strike quickly with improvised weapons, and then disappear back into the ruins before the Vorthans could respond effectively. Corporal Shin Woo-jin discovered that the mining charges they carried were particularly effective against Vorthan armor. Industrial explosives had been designed to break through solid rock, and they worked just as well on military equipment. Their armor can stop energy weapons and projectiles, he reported, after successfully ambushing a Vorthan squad. But these mining charges deliver too much kinetic force. The armor just can't absorb the impact. The battle became a deadly game of cat and mouse through the ruins of the colony. The Vorthans had superior equipment and training, but the humans had intimate knowledge of the terrain and a willingness to take risks that their enemies found unpredictable. Major, this is Commander Kim Dae-ho, came a voice over the communication channel. We can see your positions from the colony bunker. There's a group of Vorthan heavy armor moving to flank you from the west. Myung-ho looked toward the colony bunker in the distance. After 3 years of isolation, the survivors were finally able to help their rescuers. Commander Kim, can your people provide reconnaissance support? Affirmative. My engineer Park Min-ae has been monitoring Vorthan movement patterns for years. She knows their patrol routes and weak points. Park Min-ae's voice came through the channel. Major, the Vorthans have a command post in the old mining facility, 2 kilometers north of your position. If you can take that out, it will disrupt their coordination in this sector. Copy that. How do we get there without being detected? There's an old conveyor tunnel that runs from the industrial district to the mining facility. It's too small for Vorthan armor, but your soldiers should be able to move through it. Park Tae-young, Min-ae's brother, volunteered to guide the human soldiers through the tunnel system. He had spent years hiding from Vorthan patrols and knew every passage and hiding spot in the colony. Follow me, he said, as he led a squad of Marines into the darkness. Stay quiet and stay low. The Vorthans have motion detectors, but these old tunnels have enough interference to mask our movement. The journey through the tunnels took 2 hours. Passages were narrow, dark, and filled with the mechanical noise of failing life support systems. But they led directly under the Vorthan command post without being detected. Charges set, reported Sergeant Park Soo-bin as her team finished placing the mining explosives. These should bring down the entire building. The explosion lit up the colony like a second sunrise. The Vorthan command post collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris, taking with it the coordination center for their ground forces. Suddenly, The scattered Vorthan units found themselves operating without central command. "Is Major Mung Ho?" he broadcast. "The enemy command structure is down. Press the attack. Link up with colony defense forces and establish a unified perimeter." Li Hai-jin, the former Federation pilot who had been defending the colony for 3 years, led a group of colonist volunteers in a coordinated attack on the confused Vorthan forces. Her intimate knowledge of their tactics, combined with the human soldiers' unconventional weapons, created chaos in the enemy ranks. "They're falling back," she reported. "The Vorthons are retreating to defensive positions. For the first time in 3 years, we're pushing them back." As the human Marines linked up with the colony defenders, Major Oh Myung-ho realized that something significant had changed. The colonists were no longer fighting just to survive. They were fighting to win. "Captain Sung-min, this is ground team leader," he reported to the ships in orbit. "We have established contact with colony forces. Perimeter is secure and expanding. Request immediate supply drop for sustained operations." "Copy that, Major. Supply pods are already on the way. Be advised, Vorthon reinforcements are approaching from orbit. We may not be able to maintain air support much longer." Myung-ho looked up at the sky, where human ships were still engaged in running battles with the Vorthan fleet. The rescue mission was succeeding, but the hardest fighting was yet to come. "Understood, Captain? We'll hold this ground no matter what it takes." Round him, human Marines and colony defenders worked together to fortify their positions. After 3 years of hopeless resistance, the people of Calrose finally had allies who refused to give up. The ground war for Calrose had begun. The humanity was determined to finish what they had started. The sky above the colony flickered with the light of continuing space battles, but on the ground, hope was alive again. Admiral Han Jae-wook watched the tactical display with growing concern as dozens of new contacts appeared at the edge of the Calrose system. The Vorthon Empire had responded to humanity's rescue mission by sending their reserve fleet. Additional capital ships and over 60 fighters were approaching at maximum speed. "Sir," reported Captain Cho Soo-min from the bridge of the Indomitable, "we're detecting a massive Vorthan fleet inbound. Our current forces won't be able to hold them off." Jae-wook studied the numbers. His remaining ships were already damaged from breaking the initial blockade. They had 14 combat vessels still operational, most running on backup power with improvised repairs. Against this new threat, conventional tactics would mean certain destruction. "All ships, this is Admiral Jae-wook," he broadcast to the human fleet. "The Vorthans are bringing everything they have. We knew this might happen. Execute Plan Sunrise." The surface of Calrose Major Oh Myung-ho received the transmission and immediately understood what it meant. Land Sunrise was their final contingency, the desperate last resort they had hoped never to use. "Commander Kim," he called to the colony leader. "We need to access the main mining facility. All of it." Kim Dae-ho looked confused. "Major, most of those tunnels have been sealed for safety reasons. The geological surveys showed unstable conditions." "Exactly what we're counting on," Myung-ho replied. "Park Min-ae, I need you to help us turn this entire planet into a weapon." Min-ae stared at him in disbelief. "You want to use the mining charges to trigger seismic activity?" "It's not just seismic activity," Myung-ho explained. "According to our geological surveys, this planet has a network of underground magma chambers. If we can destabilize them in the right sequence, we can create artificial volcanic eruptions directly under the Vorthan ground positions." The plan was insane, dangerous, and exactly the kind of unconventional thinking that had brought humanity this far. While the space battle raged overhead, human engineers and colony survivors worked together to place massive charges in the deep mining tunnels. Park Taeyong led teams through the most dangerous passages, guiding them to the precise locations where explosions would have maximum effect on the planet's geological structure. Years of mining operations had weakened the underground formations, creating the perfect conditions for controlled collapse. In orbit, the space battle was reaching its climax. The Vorthan reinforcement fleet had arrived and was systematically destroying the remaining human ships. Captain Sung-min watched as the converted freighter New Hope exploded under concentrated fire from 3 Vorthon cruisers. "Admiral, we can't hold them much longer," he reported. They're moving into bombardment positions over the colony. Hold them off for 10 more minutes, Jae-wook replied. Whatever it takes. Lieutenant Commander Nam Gate's brother, Captain Nam Dong-soo, commanded the mining vessel Excavator. The ship was barely holding together, with hull breaches sealed by emergency foam and engines running at dangerous overload levels. All remaining ships. This is Excavator, he broadcast. Reading massive power buildup in the Vorthon flagship. They're charging orbital bombardment weapons. The Vorthon commander had decided to end the battle by destroying the colony from orbit. His massive capital ship turned its main weapons toward the planet's surface, preparing to vaporize the human landing zones in the survivor shelters. Not, if I have anything to say about it, Nam Dong-soo muttered as he changed course toward the enemy flagship. Dong-soo, what are you doing? Admiral Jae-wook called. Same thing my brother did, came the reply, making an opening. The excavator accelerated toward the Vorthon flagship, its mining equipment glowing white-hot from overload. The ship's industrial armor was already cracked and burning, but it held together long enough to reach the enemy vessel. The impact was spectacular. The converted mining ship struck the Vorthon flagship's main weapon array, just as it was charging for orbital bombardment. The resulting explosion created a chain reaction that disabled the massive ship's primary systems. On the planet's surface, Park Min-ae watched her instruments as the final charges were placed in the deep mining tunnels. The underground network now contained enough explosives to trigger the largest artificial earthquake in galactic history. Major, we're ready, she reported. But I need to warn you, once we trigger this, there's no going back. The geological changes will be permanent. Do it, Major, Oh Myung-ho ordered. The colonists chose to live on this world. They have the right to defend it. The explosion began deep underground, in chambers that had not seen light for millions of years. The carefully placed charges created a cascade of geological failures that spread through the planet's crust like a network of cracks in breaking glass. Commander Kim Dae-ho felt the ground shaking beneath the colony bunker. At first it was just a tremor, but it quickly grew into something much more powerful. The artificial earthquake was working exactly as the human engineers had calculated. All Vorthon ground forces, this is your commander, came a panicked transmission. Retreat to evacuation zones immediately. Seismic activity is off the scale. But it was too late for an orderly retreat. The underground explosions had triggered massive volcanic eruptions directly beneath the main Vorthon bases. Molten rock burst from the ground in geysers of superheated destruction, consuming enemy positions that had seemed impregnable just minutes. Before Lee Hae-jin watched from the colony's observation deck as the sky above, Calrose turned red with volcanic ash and debris from the space battle. Burning Vorthon ships fell like meteors, their wreckage scattered across the landscape. The Vorthon fleet is retreating, reported Captain Seung-min from orbit. Their ground forces are in full evacuation. They did it. The blockade is broken. In the space above Calrose, the surviving human ships regrouped around Admiral Jae-wook's flagship. They had started with 31 vessels and now had 8 ships still capable of flight. But they had achieved the impossible. The Vorthon Empire's most powerful fleet had been defeated by a small human force using mining equipment and desperate courage. All ships, this is Admiral Jae-wook. He broadcast to both the fleet and the surface. Mission accomplished. Calrose colony is free. On the planet's surface, survivors emerged from their bunkers to see a sky filled with human ships instead of Vorthon blockade vessels. The volcanic eruptions had stopped, leaving behind a changed landscape but a liberated world commander. Kim Dae-ho stood with Major Oh Myung-ho as they watched the rescue ships landing to evacuate those who wanted to leave. Many of the colonists chose to stay and rebuild their world, but now they would do so as free people. 3 years, Kim Dae-ho said quietly. 3 years we waited for help to come. Help always comes, Myung-ho replied. Sometimes it just takes longer than expected. Park Min-ae worked alongside human engineers to repair the colony's infrastructure. Her expertise in salvaging broken systems had been crucial to their survival, and now it would be essential for rebuilding. The Federation will never believe what happened here, she said to Park Tae-young, as they watched human ships unloading supplies and medical equipment. Let them try to explain it, her brother replied with a smile. Humans don't give up on people. The rescue of Calrose became legendary throughout the galaxy. The story spread from system to system, growing with each telling. Humanity had taken on impossible odds and won through determination, innovation, and an absolute refusal to abandon people in need. Admiral Han Jae-wook stood on the bridge of his flagship as the human fleet prepared to return home. Through the viewport, he could see the lights of Calrose colony shining in the darkness. After 3 years of abandonment, the colony was alive again. The galaxy had learned something important about humanity. When humans promised to help, they would break the sky wide open to keep that promise. The stars themselves were not enough to stop them when people needed rescue, as the human ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of their victory back to Earth. The people of Calrose looked up at a sky that belonged to them once again. Help had finally arrived, and it had come from the species that others considered too primitive to matter. Humanity had proven that sometimes the newest player in the galaxy could teach the oldest civilizations what it really meant to never give up.